As the children are making their way out, I'm going to ask that you would turn to the book of Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament. Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, we're going to begin reading in verse 9. Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. And a cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. These words were written by King Solomon, the wisest man that God ever created. And in this passage, he contrasts the sorrow and the dangers of going through life alone, compared with the joy and benefits of having a friend. On this Friendship Day, over the next few minutes, we are going to be looking at the topic of friends and why it's important for us, why actually God has created us for friendship. He has created us for relationship. And if we do not have that as a part of our lives, we will be missing out on the very thing God has created us for. I have a few quotes that I came across that I want to share with you, that these are thought-provoking. And as I said, sometimes they'll be a little humorous. Sometimes they'll just kind of get us to think a little bit deeper. So the first quote is this: "A real friend will tell you when you have spinach stuck in your teeth." So that's a good thing to keep in mind as we're looking forward to having lunch later. You might want to be a friend if you see some food kind of sticking in there. Hey, you got something in there, you might want to clean it out. "With money, you can buy all the friends you want, but they are never worth the price." If it takes money for you to have friends, they're not really your friends. "A valuable friend is one who will tell you what you should be told, even if it momentarily offends you." There's a scripture that says the wounds of a friend are faithful. You know, you have to have somebody very close in your life who is able to point out some of the things that are not right. And it may hurt you in the moment, but it will be for your benefit, and you will consider them a true friend when they do that. "A real friend warms you by his presence, trusts you with his secrets, and remembers you in his prayers." The trouble with being a grouch is that you have to make new friends every few months. So some of you who are in that cycle of rotating friends, you might want to take that one to heart, okay? "It is extremely difficult for a man who loses his temper to keep his friends." Another important thing to keep in mind. People who can hold their tongues rarely have any trouble holding their friends. "A true friend is like a good book. The inside is better than the cover." The difference between our friends and our enemies is this: our friends love us in spite of our faults, and our enemies hate us in spite of our virtues. You are on the wrong track when you think of friendship as something to get rather than something to give. So those are some things for us to just consider about friendship. The Bible is very clear. The Bible gives us very good instruction when it comes to having friends. It says the man or woman who wants to have friends must show himself friendly. If you're someone that says, "Man, I have no friends," well, first of all, you're here. So hopefully you'll make a friend today if that's your situation. But the reality is this: if we are friendly, we will have friends. We will have people. We will draw people toward us if we are friendly. So let's face it, if you're not willing to be a friend to someone else, don't expect to have a friend. the quality of our friendships will really rise to the level that you are willing to give of yourself for the benefit of someone else. If you have a close friend, the result of that is that both of you or either of you at one time or another have been self-sacrificing toward that other person. And that has caused the friendship to grow deeper. Certainly, this falls in line exactly with what Jesus teaches us when he says that we are to love others more than ourselves, that we are to look out for the interests of other people even more than our own. And so if we have that mindset, we will be blessed with having. Now, not everyone will be our deepest, closest friend. That's really not possible. But he will bless your life with friendships, with relationships that will be fulfilling, that will help you along life's journey. Let's look at another portion of Scripture in the Bible in 1 Samuel chapter 18. We're going to spend some time in this area. We're going to be looking at one of the closest friendships that I think we find in the Bible, and that is the friendship of David and Jonathan. So 1 Samuel chapter 18, beginning in verse 1. It says, after David had finished talking with Saul, Jonathan became one in spirit with David. Now Saul was the first king of Israel. His son's name was Jonathan. David, we know, or may remember, that he became the second king of Israel, but not yet. Saul brought David into the palace because David had an ability to play music that would soothe Saul. You know, they didn't have MP3 players and CDs, and for some of you who are older, 8-tracks. They didn't have that back then. And so they needed to have live music. And so David was blessed with a talent that God used to calm King Saul. And so David and Jonathan meet, and this is what we are reading here. It says that Jonathan became one in spirit with David, and he loved him as himself. Verse 3, and Jonathan made a covenant with David because he loved him as himself. Jonathan took off the robe he was wearing and gave it to David, along with his tunic, and even his sword, his bow, and his belt. That was no small thing for the son of the king, to lay those things aside and to give them to another. It was symbolic of, you are my closest friend. It was symbolic of, I will trust you. It was symbolic of saying, I love you. And we read these words that Jonathan loved David as he loved himself. That might surprise you to know that that's in the Old Testament. Because many times when we think of those words, we think of the teachings of Jesus, that we are to love your neighbor as you love yourself. But here we see it in the Old Testament, that these two young men became quick friends together. So now they have this friendship. And many times it is easier to start a friendship than it is to maintain a friendship. It takes a lot more work to maintain a friendship. It takes a lot of forgiveness. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of caring for the other person. So David and Jonathan, would they be able to sustain this friendship? Will they be able to keep it going when trouble comes, when there's conflict, when there's difference of opinion? And let's face it, many times in our friendships, we face such times. Many times in our relationships, even within church or within families, we face differences of opinions. How do we overcome those? Well, it wasn't long until Jonathan found himself in such a spot. His father, King Saul, began to unjustly view David as his enemy. In fact, King Saul wanted to kill David and tried to kill him. There was one of the passages talks about David is playing his harp that had so often soothed King Saul. And Saul becomes enraged and has a javelin sitting next to him and throws it at David, trying to pin him to the wall. Saul was not a good aim, evidently. He missed. But in 1 Samuel chapter 19, verse 1, we find more of this story. Saul told his son Jonathan and all the attendants to kill David. The king says to his son, I know you have a friendship with David. I want you to kill him. Saul says to the men who are attending him, all of the servants around him, if you see David again, kill him. But Jonathan had taken a great liking to David and instead warned him. He said, my father Saul is looking for a chance to kill you. Be on your guard tomorrow morning. Go into hiding and stay there. I will go out and stand with my father in the field where you are. I'll speak to him about you, and I'll tell you what I find out. And so Jonathan spoke well of David to Saul his father and said to him, let not the king do wrong to his servant David. He's not wronged you, and what he has done has benefited you greatly. He took his life in his hands when he killed the Philistine. The Lord won a great victory for all Israel, and you saw it and were glad. Why then would you do wrong to an innocent man like David by killing him for no reason? Jonathan, who is a friend of David, now takes up David's cause and it says, Saul, king, why? Why do you want to kill this one who was willing to lay down his life? Don't you remember when you were out in the battlefield and the Philistine giant named Goliath challenged the armies of Israel? And it was only David who was willing to lay down his life. Excuse me. Why would you kill him? He's only benefited you. He's only done you good. And so Jonathan, as a friend, warns David about this dangerous situation. Hopefully you will do likewise. If you have a friend that is facing something dangerous that would impact their life, whether it be physically or spiritually, that you would come alongside them and warn them. Hey, be careful what you're doing. That's dangerous. That could lead you down a wrong path. Do you really want to head that direction? Do you really want to get your life involved in that circumstance? I'm looking out for you. Now understand that even though Jonathan was the king's son, in one sense he really was taking his own life in his hand by confronting the king. For him to say, notice he didn't say dad. He called him king. King, why would you do this? So he was very much aware he was addressing his father as the king and not dad. It speaks to the seriousness of what was occurring. There may be times where you as a friend must stick up for someone when someone else is speaking badly of a person in an unjust way. Situations, it could be in your family, it could be in your workplace, it could be at school, where someone is bad-mouthing your friend or demeaning them, and you know it's not true. There may be times where you need to stand up and say, that's not true. I disagree with you. They're not like that. Why are you lying about them? Why are you saying this? So on this occasion, Jonathan speaks up on David's behalf. And as a result, Jonathan's words caused the heart of the king to be changed. Now, this would cycle back and forth. There would be times where King Saul wanted to kill David, and then there were times where King Saul loved David. There were times where he's like, I want him dead, and then there would be times where he would say, David, I am the one who is wrong. You've done nothing wrong. And so we see this back and forth that is going on in King Saul's life. Later, King Saul would again order David's death without telling Jonathan. He kept it hidden from his son, but just told his soldiers this is what he wanted to have done. And David goes to Jonathan and says, Jonathan, your dad's, if I could paraphrase, your dad's at it again. He wants me dead. I don't know why. And Jonathan says, David, no, I talked to my dad. He realizes you're good. He realizes you've done nothing wrong to him. He told me. He changed his mind. And David says, I know, but he's issued an order. And because Jonathan knew David had never lied to him as a friend, he took David at his word. And eventually Jonathan finds out David was right. And they go out into a field. David's hiding. Jonathan says, I'm going to give you a signal. And I'm going to pretend I am out practicing with my bow. And if I shoot arrows in a certain place, it means you're safe, you can come in. But if I shoot them beyond you, it means run and don't come back. And that's what Jonathan did. He warned his friend David that his father, Saul, wanted to kill him again. And David begins this journey of running through the wilderness for many, many years as the armies of Saul tried to chase him and hunt him down. But the friendship of Jonathan and David remained strong. In chapter 23, verse 15, we find these words. While David was at Horesh in the desert of Ziph, he learned that Saul had come out to take his life. And Saul's son Jonathan went to David at Horesh and helped him find strength in God. Again, we see that this friendship was so close that Jonathan was willing to even defy his father. Now, I'm not saying that children, that you should disobey your parents, by no means. But in this circumstance, in this situation, Jonathan knew that his dad was in the wrong. And so he went to strengthen his friend. That's another important aspect of friendship. Because there will be times when your friend is going through a trial, a hardship, a difficulty. Make sure that you are that friend who encourages them in the Lord. Make sure that your counsel, that your words are good words, are helpful words, and won't allow them to go down a path that will cause them more injury. Make sure you are not like one of Job's friends who come to him and speak words that basically rub salt in his wounds and discourage him. Again, if it's an issue of a person doing something wrong, address the wrong. Address that. Say, that's not the right thing. That's not what you should be doing. That will help them. Now, they may listen to you. They may not. That's their choice. But at least if you're addressing that, they have a choice to make. They know that you as their friend are not in favor of the direction they're planning to take. Verse 18, the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. And then Jonathan went home, but David remained in Horesh. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to jump ahead in the story. Because it is an ending that most of us would not want to see. If you are someone who likes TV shows with good endings, you would not like this to be the plot. But there comes a time in in Saul's life and in Jonathan's life where, as the king and as the king's son, they have to go into battle against an enemy nation who's attacking them. And eventually Saul and Jonathan are killed in a battle. And David becomes king of Israel. In 2 Samuel chapter 9, verse 1, we find these words. David is now king. David was anointed as the next king even when he was a young man. But it took many, many years after much running through the wilderness as Saul was trying to kill him. Many lessons learned. And then I would encourage you, go back and read those stories to remind you. But now David is king. God has prepared him. God has trained him to have a right mind about being king. And David asks this question: is there anyone still left of the house of Saul to whom I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? David has come to the throne. It wasn't his immediate thing, but he's on the throne and he's reflecting back. I'm sure he's remembering his friendship with Jonathan. And so he says to his servants, the people around him, he's like, is there anybody left from Saul's family that I could be kind to them? Not for Saul's sake, but for Jonathan's sake. Because of Jonathan's friendship to me. Is there anyone that I can be kind to? Jonathan has long since died, but David does not forget him. David knows his own life has benefited from that friendship that he had with Jonathan. And he remembers the covenant that they made together. Verse 3, he says, the king asked, is there no one still alive from the house of Saul to whom I can show God's kindness? And Ziba answered the king. He said, there is still a son of Jonathan. He is lame in both feet. Where is he? The king asked. Ziba said, he is at the house of Machir, son of Amiel, in Lodabar. So King David had him brought from Lodabar, from the house of Machir, son of Amiel. When Mephibosheth, son of Jonathan, son of Saul, came to David, he bowed down to pay him honor. David said, Mephibosheth, at your service, he replied. Don't be afraid. Why would he have been afraid? Well, because it was very customary for the king that would come into power to remove all of the previous family of the previous king so that they could not mount a challenge against him. And so Mephibosheth is found and is brought to the king, and I'm sure in his mind he's thinking, this could be it for me. The king has found me. I am the grandson of Saul, the son of Jonathan, and David wants me dead. But David says to him, don't be afraid, for I will surely show you kindness for the sake of your father Jonathan. I will restore to you all the land that belonged to your grandfather Saul, and you will always eat at my table. When David finds out there is a son of Jonathan still living, he remembers the friendship. And he says, I will take care of him. I will make sure he is going to eat at my table until the day he dies. I'm going to restore his land back to him. And this is another aspect of friendship. Good friendships will continue to have a positive effect on your family even after you're gone. There are times where those deep friendships carry on into the next generation. Oh, I remember your dad. Yeah, anything you need, just come and ask me. You need my help? I'll be glad to help you. Your dad helped me so many times. Oh, your mom was so sweet. When I was in the hospital, she would bring me food and make sure my family was taken care of. Anything you need, ask. Those are the types of friendships we strive for. Oh, it may not always be in the form of a financial benefit or an inheritance. It could simply be that ongoing example of a godly character that is passed on to your children, which is better than gold. It could be that your life, your character, your faithfulness is not forgotten by those who knew you. And it becomes an inspiration to those younger than you. I've shared with the church family here before that this is my home church that I grew up in for the most part. And there were men and women that spoke into my life as a young person. There were men and women that I looked up to, that I wanted to emulate. I wanted to be like them. Some of them were men of prayer. I was like, Lord, help me. Help me to be like them spiritually. Some were men of great kindness that were willing to give of themselves to others. Some had wisdom in their decision making. But we all have these types of people that we look up to because of their example, because of how they lived, and the results of their lives are still impacting us. And because of that impact, we are now impacting those coming behind us. I trust your life will be an inspiration into the lives of other people to live rightly before the Lord, to honor Him. John chapter 15 in the New Testament. John 15, verse 13. Jesus says this, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down one's life for his friends. You are my friends if you do what I command. I no longer call you servants, because a servant doesn't know his master's business. Instead, I have called you friends. For everything that I learned from my Father, I have made known to you. You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit, fruit that will last, and so that whatever you ask in my name, the Father will give you. This is my command. Love each other." In this, Jesus expresses his desire to enter a level of relationship with his disciples that goes beyond the master-slave relationship and moves them into friendship. Do you know that Jesus wants you to be his friend and that he wants to be yours? If you don't know him today, he wants to start a friendship with you. He already loves you more than his own life because he died on the cross for you. And you can count on Jesus as a friend. He'll stick up for you when your enemy, the devil, brings accusations against you. He will testify to his Father in heaven that he knows you and you are his friend. And with Jesus as your friend, you can be assured he will not forget the covenant that was made with you. That if you are willing to believe in him, to confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, that you will live with God for eternity. And that when you die, Jesus, your friend, will be waiting for you. And beyond that, you can trust him to take care of your loved ones even after you're gone. I hope that you know Jesus is your friend. But remember, friendship goes both ways. So let me ask you this question. Are you his friend? Jesus said, "You're my friends if you do what I command you." And as his friend, you must be willing to stand up for him in front of others who would unjustly put him down. As his friend, you must love him more than your own life. As his friend, you must keep the covenant you've made with him. You see, a one-sided relationship does not make a friendship. Both parties have to be willing to do their share, to love the other as they love themselves. And I trust that you have entered into this friendship with Jesus. But if you have not, that you would do that today. That you would take him at his word. That he will be your friend. It is said of Jesus that he is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. He will be with you, never leave you, never forsake you. He will be with you throughout life and throughout eternity.